Hello, beautiful soul family. Welcome into the space. We have arrived at day 3 of 30 Days of Light Codes, and today is all about the intuition. So, as we set that intention, as we are learning to trust deeply our intuition on our soul path, on our path of remembrance, what does that mean to us and what are the challenges? I can speak from my perspective because I have been through a lot of challenges. So we'll get into a little bit about that and then I will get into the session for you. For those of you who are new here to my channel, my name's Lissy and I'm a soul guide from Aotearoa, New Zealand. And I am just walking my own soul calling, which is bringing through transmissions for you to support you on your soul path of remembrance and heart awakening. So if you feel aligned to this work, if you feel aligned to energetically receive from me today, I invite you to rest into this space, to close down your eyes, to connect into your breath as the bridge into the subtle realms. And we'll just take a few deep breaths in together. Breathing in deeply, bringing your awareness down your spine to your root chakra as you expand your belly, holding for a moment, pulling up, which is often known as the Mula Bandha in yogic philosophy, but pulling up through your perineum. And then relaxing, letting it all go, allowing the flow back up your spine, out through your crown, and then just continue that practice, that flow as we settle into the space. I will chat a little bit about my journey with intuition and building the foundations of trust, because that's essentially what we are doing when we are anchoring back into heart wisdom. This is something that's never left us, but what has left us is the foundations upon which creates the solid trust, the solid pillar to flow from the center point of our heart, because that feels completely different to what we are used to working in, and that is the linear logic mind, the logical thinking center that helps us program, work out solutions and take aligned action. It's not so much going to help us with our intuitive voice and the feeling sensations that we receive through our heart space and the intelligent wisdom of our body. The first thing I realized that I was getting mixed up a lot of the time was I didn't trust the messages, and therefore the messages got a little bit muddled in the beginning. I would think it's my intuition, but it was my mind kicking in. And so there was a lot of back and forth and refining in the first few years of really deciphering the language of my intuitive wisdom that was flowing through my body, and the whispers, downloads, and feelings and sensations that I was having, really bringing that into alignment, clearing out the clutter of my mind and old programming and fear, and really resting my nervous system to feel safe in who I was, because I was making a massive shift from who I was known as in my community and the direction and the path that my soul was pushing me into, because I was really digging my heels in at the beginning. And as I began to trust through taking those steps, through actually just going, I don't know how this is going to work out, but I'm going to trust it anyway, then the breadcrumbs started to really build, and that helped every single time build momentum. And it also helped when it was like, okay, that wasn't intuition, that was just my mind kicking in. And so it's like, okay, I recognize what that feels like, realigning myself, so next time that happens, I can trust what it feels like within my own system, within my own body, when I'm in alignment. What does that feel like to me? Because yes, there's lots of broad terms, but we're all wired slightly different. We all have our own unique templating and blueprint from what we've lived in this lifetime. and our systems that we are operating on, what do they respond to, and where are we on our path and our journey. So there is a lot of different factors at play, but if we strip that all back, what we're doing when we are learning to trust our intuition is we are learning the language of our heart. We are learning what it feels like when that flow is open, how our body responds to that, and what that sensation, and if we do it enough, we start to build strength and endurance around opening, keeping that channel open, so that we recognize that feeling and sensation more, and we trust it more, and therefore our nervous system starts to trust it more and not feel threatened, because it is stepping into the unknown. We don't know, other than that feeling, that compelling feeling that's pulling us magnetically towards something, but we don't always know if that is right or not. And it doesn't always have to be these massive life-altering decisions. It can be, small, impactful ways in which we are being called to nourish and nurture ourselves. Or, the other day I had a synchronistic event happen where I ran into a dear friend of mine who is a psychic medium in New World. And I hadn't seen her for a long time, and we were both really pleased to see one another. And we went on about our day, and I didn't think much of it, although I always know that there's a reason we bump into people when we are out and about. And so I was pondering on that, and then when I got home, I seen that Oprah Winfrey was coming to New Zealand, and she is one of the first books I ever brought when I started going through my awakening, was The Wisdom of Sundays, I think her book was called. And that book was just, for a time when I was really confused and I didn't know what was happening, 8 years ago to me, with all of my clear senses opening, that book was like my Bible. It really was. It was so full of wisdom from all the different people that she has been able to interview over the years. And one particular phrase that she says that has always stuck with me was, there's no greater gift that you can give or receive than to honor your calling. It is why you were born, and it's how you become most truly alive. There is no greater gift that you can give or receive than to honor your calling. It is why you were born, and it's how you become most truly alive. Those words sit with me honestly every morning when I wake up. This is what helps me really start to fine-tune and settle into my soul's calling, who I am, who am I, why am I here? These bigger esoteric questions that really are pulling us into this deeper aspect of ourselves. It's asking us to question all the different elements of our life and really in alignment with who we are, what is out of alignment. And this is where our nervous system comes into play, because often when we are operating out of alignment, but our soul is ready to step into alignment, that can create an energetic backlog, also known as suffering, where our soul is trying to pull us in this direction. We are holding on in this direction, not wanting to let go of this beautiful, safe life that we have carefully curated. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's wonderful, but why am I being pulled in this direction? And this is when we're learning to trust our intuition, because this is an unknown path. This path I know. This path I have no idea. And this is the scariest part about the evolution of ourself, about the evolution of humanity. We are in times where we don't know how this is going to play out, and things are getting more and more intense energetically. And so as we cultivate the relationship within, we begin to build the trust to our intuitive flow to source. As we build that, we strengthen our capacity to hold more of our light, to help align the areas of our life that have all, it's like all these pieces to the puzzle, and we're trying to we know there's a beautiful, perfectly aligned puzzle that all the pieces fit together, and we are trying to force pieces into the places that were never designed to be held there. And so as we listen to what it is that we are being called, what steps that what actions that we are being called to take, and how we are really showing up for ourselves and giving ourselves the grace to allow for the push and the pull, because the ego death that we experience when we are pushing ourselves past the programming that we are currently, that is a part of trusting the intuitive flow. Because in order to trust the intuitive flow, we are pushing ourselves out and stretching our capacity into something new. That is the experience of the growth pains that we are going through. So as I digress from that story, I got home and I seen that Oprah Winfrey was coming to New Zealand, and I thought, oh wow, I should really book a ticket. This is someone who was right there at the start of my journey, and when all these kind of wild experiences were happening for me. And she wasn't really someone I've ever followed. I'm obviously, like everyone, aware of who she is, and but it's not someone that I was actively watching her shows or anything, but her words and her wisdom were flowing through in that moment. And so it is someone that I've always held as one of those pillars of light that really were stable when everything around me felt shaky. And then my mind kicked in, and I was like, oh no, that's a lot of money to go up to Auckland just to listen to her speak. And so I didn't book it. And then my friend messaged me and said, hey, Lissy, you will never believe, after I ran into you, I then seen that Oprah Winfrey was coming to New Zealand. And this was something we years ago had chatted about, how I would love to meet her. And and she's like, you know what we feel about synchronicity? And in that moment, I was like, yes, my intuition was right. And so even I still take a moment, take a beat sometimes with, this doesn't make sense, but I'm trusting my intuition on this. And so I booked my tickets, and I'm going to see her at the end of the year. I mean, that is our intuition is not always telling us these things, these grand gestures to do. It can be as small as, the way in which we serve ourselves during the day, from patterns and habits that show up that are pulling us out of alignment. It can be our thoughts looping in our mind, things that are centered around worthiness. I mean, for me, I struggled for years and still do, because let's be honest, it never leaves us. There is not a single person on earth that doesn't have negative thoughts. There is always neutral, positive, and negative. This is the planet that we live on. So there is always a leniency for things to go in either direction. The way in which we have been programmed, the way in which we perceive experiences, the way in which we feel through what we have experienced, and how we really anchor that into our subconscious is really the way in which we will direct whether it is positive, neutral, or a negative response. Now, when it came to my intuition, I had so many voices in my head about, oh wow, I've been talking for nearly 15 minutes and we haven't even gotten into the session. I am sorry, everybody. I have gone off on what normally happens, which is my intuitive flow. Okay, I will tie I will wrap this up and then I will get into the session, I promise. Here's me saying these are going to be 10-minute sessions and I have been talking now for 15 minutes. Bear with me. I will sum this up and make it quick, but essentially it was the negative thoughts within my mind that were tied to belief systems around my self-worth and my self-love and my self-acceptance that were constant anchors when I didn't trust my intuitive flow, that gave a reason within my mind as to why I shouldn't trust my intuitive flow. You're not good enough. You're not worthy. Who will listen to you? You're just, you have absolutely no value. These are all things that were going through my mind. Now, that's not true. Yet the mind will give you a very convincing path of thought that if you are not consciously aware, you will buy into that story. And this is why we constantly loop these patterns, because we buy into the stories of our mind rather than pulling ourselves back and perceiving what systems that are operating and catching them and objectively going, well, hang on a minute. Of course that's not true, because I serve this many people a week. I see the results that they're getting, and I trust in who I am and my life path and what I've done to get here in this moment and what I've been through. And I know that what I've been through is often what they are currently going through. And so I know that those thoughts don't hold any traction to me anymore. And so I'm going to give you some love and some grace and allow you to go on your way. And I center myself in my heart in this moment. For I am not my thoughts. And I have the power to be able to bring myself back into center and choose, as compelling as that feels, and choose a new path, a new thought stream, a new way to perceive this. And so, let's dive on into the energy of trusting our intuition. Let's bring through the codes that are going to help create a supportive flow for you so that you may take aligned actions and trust that that process gets refined over time, that it might not be perfect, yet it doesn't need to be. You just need to start. You need to start honoring your heart and then being curious as to how it unfolds, what lessons perhaps are in the actions, in the experience that has unfolded for me. Quite often it will be opposite to the mind, what the mind expects the experience to be. That's when you know you're in the heart, when it unfolds completely differently, but exactly the way you need. Ma tu ira krania to isharakrumia te imra, suktu unia te ira. Jenera krama tu ira sheka rukte inia ta halakru imia tu shene era ma. Jendro te inia to hurukte inia shkrami ara krisi in ikruma. Selene to ikramo to inia to. Heart wisdom shunarahli ite kalamotu should make you feel uncomfortable. Te la kure sheklamatu ishin narosukto imia ta hari em. It is the relearning within our systems, within our nervous system, to tune into and understand through trust the discernment between a real threat and that of the source flow, intuitive flow of our soul. Tela turak te enela handroi itikrai anara sukru imiati. Hanshit ke an aruktu iniata haru suktu in itiklama tu te era. Sute en raka aero suktu mitikrai urak ina. Elanroi te eka haru suktu un eshala handroi imitikai uru suktu in ite era tu te enala tu ma. Jero to he krane e tahalo tu umite e aroko ma ai rani to ulama. Jetu shukra inni ta hatu shin arakta anrata 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 an. Se klamotu umite e asurukre imite kairo sukta anera. Jano to ulaklane ta ha sukt un it era. E mare e klano te ke eni te karo sukt un isha. Shera no tu uke en. Sa rekte en rasa amatu imia. Jur en asukru nyata alejandro sikra. Just feeling these codes swirling down from your crown all the way through, anchoring into your earth star. Selundrekte eo sukru mai ea. Expanding out in your heart. Opening up space. La tuile inia tahalakru inia shala matukri miete ea. Shh. Anoti e. Refining the space to hear your soul speak. Halinite karai otukshan an eroktu ma. Natushe in aroktu un ekrama e te isaktu mia. Releasing the programming that's telling you it needs to be better, more refined, should be further ahead, should understand it more by now. You know, all of these things that the mind will constantly pour out. And your job to build your inner pillar of light and stabilize this connection so that you can trust your intuitive flow is to take these small actions that are refining with every drop. By the very essence of you showing up in this space for yourself to open and receive and be in communion with your light. Isharakran ela amrote e shkre ineto im aerokrote e ne shalhandre imitoko I andi karakte in. Feel the flow freely through to you now. Ishani ato ikrana amorase en ite erokromi e nara noti e. Shan ikran, this divine spark, this magnetic life force energy that pulses through you. Shunna shanne rakti innara sutu ummiata airo. Tela note era kaira. Matea. Taking a deep breath in and out. Anchoring back down into your body, into the space. Thank you so much for joining me on day 3 as we start to dive into the intuitive flow of our soul and building the foundations of trust, knowing that that is a spiral of deepening into oneself. And you are exactly where you need to be in this moment. Opening up to more of yourself, trusting, allowing for possibility, right or wrong. For that is the mind that is trying to conform you into receiving it in a certain way rather than just allowing it to be what it is. Knowing that there is medicine in either direction, good or bad, positive or negative. That is our perspective upon what unfolds. Te e korone e te kiranda. But our intuitive flow builds from that as we refine from that. And this is the space which allows us to flourish into who we truly are. Because each step builds momentum, builds energy, builds a magnetism towards that which our soul has come here to be and express. All right, I will leave you all now. We've hit the 25-minute mark, so it's definitely a far cry from 10 minutes, but I will try and rein myself back in so that they're not all this length. But this is obviously what's been needing to flow, so we will just trust that. I hope you all have an absolutely wonderful day and take care. We will see you again tomorrow if you join me for day 4.